Eli, let me start with you. You and I have talked a lot about the mosaic that you're reporting and Phil's reporting and Carol's reporting and great reporting from other news organizations has depicted of the ex-president. But this is a new portrait, it would seem, with some of the most brutal personality features, I have to call them, I guess, of the ex-president and the brutality with which he treated his vice president revealed for the first time. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, we saw this play out for 4 years, and we saw it all build to the election, the president's inability to accept the election results, and what we saw on January 6th, and what we've seen since, frankly. I mean, we have known from covering this White House and this amazing book and other books that are out add to our understanding of things that were reported at the time. But we knew that the president couldn't accept the results, told everybody that there was fraud, even though there was never evidence, and his attorneys were getting laughed out of court. He went down to the ellipse. He gave the speech the morning of the 6th. He pretended that he was going to walk with the people who attended over to the Capitol. And then when they actually started breaching the building, we know that he didn't pick up the phone, even when people like Kevin McCarthy were on the phone with him, yelling at him, telling him he needed to do that. He wouldn't get on the phone and tell these people to stand down. It took him 3 takes to record a message to the supporters to tell them to go home. And the best take they could go with was the one where Trump said, "I love you, you're great people." So this has always been who Donald Trump is. But this just sort of texturizes our understanding of the fact of how much strain he put on everyone around him and on our democratic system. And it was hard to cover that in real time. Joint Chiefs telling people before Election Day came and afterwards that he was considering what would happen if Trump wanted to use the military to overturn the election, that he was thinking about those things in the run-up to the election itself, that he was talking about, you know, what he would do, how he would resign, how others would resign. I mean, just having to have those contingencies in place tells you that a lot of the people in the government, the Trump administration, knew the threat that was sitting in the Oval Office, and yet they all struggled with how to stop it, how to constrain Donald Trump. Obviously, there were a lot of enablers around Mark Meadows, Rudy Giuliani. There's obviously great reporting in the book about their role in sort of pumping Trump up and encouraging some of his worst impulses. But none of this is something that, you know, speaks to the health of our democracy. It just further illustrates how the Constitution is just a piece of paper, doesn't defend itself. The people who are entrusted with these positions of power, it's up to them to sort of carry our system forward. And for 4 years, there was great question as to whether or not the person at the top of our government was going to do that.
Well, and I think, Jeremy, what the book allows us to do is stop using the word struggled with, tried and failed. I mean, they failed to protect the country from Donald Trump. They failed. They failed to protect Mike Pence from Donald Trump. And I want to read some more about Mike Pence's experience on January 6th. Leonnig and Rucker go on to report at 2:26 p.m. after a team of agents scouted a safe path to ensure the Pences would not encounter trouble, Goebbels, their top agent, Secret Service agent, and the rest of Pence's detail guided them down a staircase to a secure subterranean area that rioters couldn't reach, where the vice president's armored limousine awaited. Goebbels asked Pence to get in one of the vehicles. Quote, "We can hold here," he said. "I'm not getting in the car, Tim," Pence replied. "I trust you, Tim, but you're not driving the car. If I get in that vehicle, you guys are taking off. I'm not getting in that car." The Pences then made their way to a secure underground area to wait out the riot. Now, someone familiar with this reporting, Jeremy Bash, tells me that Pence feared a conspiracy, feared that the Secret Service would aid Trump in his ultimate aims that day. I mean, this is the most harrowing version of Mike Pence's day that I've seen reported out.
Nicole, this is typical of a dictatorship, of an authoritarian, anti-democratic regime. This is not typical of the greatest democracy ever on the face of the planet. And I think what you're seeing here is a dynamic that the former president inculcated, advanced, and wished for, which is to somehow enlist the security services of the United States, to include law enforcement, to include maybe the Secret Service, to include the United States military, and maybe the intelligence community, which are and must remain absolutely apolitical professional organizations. And I think it was his ambition to somehow insert them into his political gamesmanship to retain power. And, thankfully, those organizations are full of women and men who have sworn an oath to the Constitution, up and down the chain of command, who I think have been classically trained in the democratic ideals that underpin our security, intelligence, and military organizations. And they were having nothing of it. But, the reason we got to this point where essentially Trump was trying to set up a situation where might would make right, meaning, my security services would help achieve a political outcome, is because Donald Trump took us there. And I want to tip my hat to the people inside our professional government organizations who continue to be under attack from some parts of our body politic today, because our organizations should never be brought into an election controversy or any political gamesmanship.
So, Jeremy, let me stay with you. I mean, I think you're also maybe speaking to or appropriately describing the role that we're learning General Milley played. Let me read this from Leonnig and Rucker's new book. Milley felt he had to be on guard for what might come. If someone really wanted to take over the country, he reasoned, they would need the so-called power ministries, the Defense Department, the FBI, the CIA. Now that some movement acolytes had a toehold in the Pentagon, he would have to watch them closely. But what if more were installed at the FBI and CIA? Milley confided this worry to his closest deputies, though he acknowledged that it sounded slightly crazy. Quote, they may try, but they're not going to effing succeed, he told them. You can't do this without the military. You can't do this without the CIA and the FBI. We're the guys with the guns. I take your point about the institutions holding, Jeremy, but I guess I'm old enough to remember when it was a crisis that it came that close. And I want you to speak to sort of, Milley was at least described in this book as coup adjacent. And that feels like something that we don't pause and spend enough time talking about. And without a bipartisan commission examining January 6th, without a lot of transparency around the final days at the Pentagon, this piece of reporting feels like the closest look we have at the strain at the Pentagon.
Yeah, but Nicole, I think we need to be precise in our language. So anytime we use the word coup and the military in sort of the same sentence, obviously alarm bells go off. And, where are we? I mean, this is America. We shouldn't be even having them in the same, story, let alone in the same sentence. But my understanding of the reporting here from Carol and Phil is that essentially there were senior leaders in the Pentagon in uniform like General Milley who said that Trump's acolytes were streaming into the street, what he called the brown shirts, basically these anti-democratic, fascist, authoritarian, violent, anti-rule of law, anti-law enforcement people who were trying to storm the Capitol and subvert the rule of law and subvert our democracy. And there was a concern that the military would have to spring into action and play some role to contain street violence or to contain something. I mean, I'm saying that because I don't think, at least my understanding of the reporting, there was no discussion about enlisting the military in actually holding power for Donald Trump. And I say that pretty confidently because, Nicole, I know the measure of the women and men in uniform in our United States military. And I've recently spent in recent even hours and days with people out at intelligence agencies and law enforcement organizations. And they were as horrified as any citizen in our country about what went down the last 4 years. And they have breathed a collective sigh of relief that never would they be put in any position to shade intelligence or shade law enforcement or use their authorities in any inappropriate way. I mean, I really want to stress this because there is a narrative out there that somehow there are people inside these organizations that are playing politics. And that's not my experience at all. If anything, I think they just wanted to say as far the heck away from politics as possible.